Okay. Thank you, Pepe. It's a pleasure for me to welcome again Roberto Maranca here in presence for the second time for Federico lecture. I'm very glad to see how much people are in presence today. Obviously, this is something I like to do because I'm a long time friend, Roberto. This is the reason I'm introducing it. But the idea was discussed with Professor Longo and Professor Siciliano to offer to you some engaging activities in the part of experiential learning. That is something very important and I hope fruitful for your students in data science, both of the first and second year. I imagine one of the alumni of this course are also connected from home. So it's an experience that you can touch from the real business world here. Roberto is very open to your questions, to your collaboration, and in the end will offer us a practical activity to be engaged in, hands-on. So I imagine this is one of the best things that could happen in the university today. I won't spoil time and give opportunity to Roberta also to give some introduction words before Roberta starts. Thank you again for being here.
Few words to say that Roberto Maranca is the president of Data Excellence in Schneider Electrics. So in this company, they start up a project about since 2018, but Roberto was already working in this topic some years earlier. So he brought his experience to Schneider Electric to build up a unit team working on the excellence of data. The seminars are organized in 3 slots. One is today about data culture. The second one is about data change. And the third topic is data value. So you understand from this flow chart, I mean, how Roberto was organized this short course is just to stress on the word data. There should be a kind of culture in the company to be sure about the quality of the data, what are the process, what are the key issues that the company has to ensure to be to govern, to manage the whole process of gathering all data from different sources, to let all the units to work about this. And then there is a second step, which is very important, about the possibility to innovate some process, so the innovation in the company. If you start up with this type of experience, you can make some innovation in the organization of your activity. And then the third one is that he has to brings value to the company. So he has to ensure that the company, from the experience of Roberto and his team, he can make some profit, satisfaction, utility, depending on which type of company you are working in. So in Schneider, I suppose it's a profit, it's revenues.
We're not the charity.
Yes. So I give all the time now for the seminar. In the end, there will be a kind of exercise you have prepared for students. So I hope that the old students now can mix up. There are students here in the first line, the new students arriving just a few days ago. Then I see a second line with all students of the second year. And then in the back side, I see in the end of all tables, there are students of the first year that are
you
attending. Yes, I'm just doing a kind of classification. I know, of course, the classes. Okay.
All right. Welcome. This is going to be a bit of a ride. And of course, to do this, I need to introduce you to some concepts that maybe you're not completely familiar with, like organizational concepts or governance concepts, but don't worry. Gonna go steady, and also we're gonna take between seminar 1 and seminar 2, we can collaborate offline and say, oh, I didn't understand that, and so we bring everyone up to speed for the seminar 2. So try to follow me, but stop me as well, because I'm a kind of an old comedian, so I know my stuff. So even if you need to stop me, I will pick it up from where I left. All right. Sorry for the technical glitches at the beginning. So data, right? You want to do data. But what I'm trying to do in this seminar is to expand a little bit your understanding of what doing data means. Because sometimes you might feel that I've done an algorithm, I've selected the features, I've done the pipeline, and there you go, I've done data. No, actually, that's not the full story. So that was the original intention for having this type of practical things in which I bring you close to what's happening in the company when you go with something you think is fantastic, and unfortunately reaction is not that good. Oh, it doesn't work. It's not telling me what I feel. That, oh, yesterday I found something that is much better. I found an app that does what you're doing. So we need to understand what it means. In the end, most practically, what you see here, what is it? The sun or a star. Why I'm putting this? Because everyone is saying data is like the new oil, right? No, I think data is a bit more than that. It's so revolutionary, it's so impactful, it's so almighty that we need to think about more like fusion, an enormous amount of energy that is going to be unleashed. But unfortunately, am I doing something wrong? Oh, that's interesting. But unfortunately, what happens is that some people are approaching data this way. So they're so into, oh, what is that the technical thing is doing for me, that I'm missing the biggest part of what's happening around them. And that's when I use this one in my company, people say, what do you mean? Well, what I mean, you come to me and say, I want data, you're telling me which column in the SAP system, in which table you are trying to find things. Maybe you don't know what this thing is, but still you're after the column. That's the not right way of looking. Data is not IT. Data is not information technology. Data is way more than that. Data is like water. Data is like water that flows around your company, and the islands you see there are hosting the tribes of different people that are sitting in your company, and each one of them wants to do something a bit different. Each one of them is using their own words. Each one of them is on their own taboo. There are words you can't use. In one tribe might be very upset if you call product something. You might need to call it offer, or you might need to call it material, because then look at that from a production point of view. So you see, the issue is that at the end, data will flow here, where you have your customers. Having a return?
No, it's okay. I was checking the.
Checking that I'm having an echo. Yes, hello, Nico. So, and your customers, your employees, your suppliers. Your brain doesn't work if you do that. So you have your investors, your regulators. So you want to know that you're giving them the right data, but unfortunately, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get it because someone made that data bad, and they don't care who did it. I don't care if it was marketing team. I don't care if it was the finance team. I can't use it. And the other thing that usually happens when people are trying to use data is that there is a very important moment in the life of data that is affecting all of us, is when people are changing things. And people are changing things doing projects. Why people are doing projects? Because they want to achieve a strategic initiative or a strategic imperative. If I want to launch a new product on the market, maybe I need to change all the things I'm doing in marketing. Maybe I need to retool my factory. Maybe I need to actually bring in new raw material. Maybe I need to start in more different customers. So that all of that is data stuff. And you have projects, and projects are trying to usually change more the system. So I want a new app. I want a new application because I need to, I need to expand in a country, and this country hasn't got my tool. I need to buy another tool. I need to implement the tool. So this clock here signifies that most of people, when they're doing big program of change in the company, they forget about data. So they do the requirements, they understand what they want to do, and they understand what they need to change. Then they do the design. So they try to design literally something that will fulfill that, and they forget about data. They forget about the data requirement. They forget about data in the production or in the design. Then they build something, and they forget about data. You know when they remember about data? At the very end, when they're doing testing. So the deadline is approaching. I need to roll out. I need to go live. I spent 90% of my budget, and now Michele is going then, is testing and says, doesn't work. Why? Data's not good. So what can you do? Oh, I can't do anything because I need to go live. Well, but you're going to go live with something that's going to be wrong. Well, I need to do it anyway. And that's what's happened. People are creating more and more complexity. They're creating a mess. And so change is an important moment. The other thing that is affecting us is, we are not good are quantifying quality. Most of the people that are working in these projects in this company, when you ask them, right, you want to do a new dashboard, you want to do an algorithm, you want to create a new something that will predict the propensity to buy, but what is it you're gonna get? What's the value you're gonna get out of this? How much value you're gonna lose if the data you're trying to use is not perfect? And that's a question that's very difficult to answer. And you end up in a paradox. The paradox is that people are telling you, or more a paradox, is more a very binary, very stubborn approach to say, either you give me the data perfect, or I can't use it. Why? Because I can't tell you what is good enough. I can't put a slide that says, if you give me this 70%, 80%, I'm gonna be okay in using it. People are not having that tooling in their head. So the only alternative they're having when the guy like me asking how you want your data is to say perfect. Or at least I'm gonna tell you, make sure that finance likes it, and then I will like it as well. Are you still following me? Yeah, a bit of nodding usually for someone speaking, someone nodding is good reinforcement of my learning that you're getting something, right? So it's good. So and I'm gonna keep on mentioning data because the thing that happens when you want to do, everyone wants to do digital transformation. Have you heard this kind of a let's say sentence or the ambition? Oh, I want to digitally transform my company, right? Most of them are still thinking digitally transforming means to put on the internet something, right? But what they find out is usually what they think, or when you go, digital transformation has been probably the grave of a lot of data scientists, just to warn you. Because what happens, company wants to digitally transform. So how do I digitally transform? I'm gonna create new products for my customer. What kind of product? Digital product. Okay, so digital product will be using data. Yes, a lot. So but how we start? We do incubation. So we start incubation, we do something small, we do a small thing that we like to use in a much bigger environment. But how do I do it this? Usually I do sandboxing. So I'm creating a test lab. Something is incredibly sanitized, something is incredibly curated. In fact, they say that people in data are spending 80% of the time curating data and 20% using it. So you have this sandbox in which, oh, finally, Eureka works. I can predict something. Then what do? You have this shiny little toy that you throw in the environment around it, in the wider world of your company where data is not good, and the little thing dies. It's like taking a very small plant from a greenhouse where the temperature was perfect, the humidity was perfect, and you plant it straight into the ground. The first frost that comes in kills it. That's where digital transformation is basically having at its ankle a nice bow chained that is bad data. It's literally hampering your progress. That's why I introduced data excellence. And we're going to go through the data excellence more as a what is that. And you have it here. I want to put clearly the difference between governance and excellence. So the way I see it, I should probably have put a disclaimer. That's the way I see it. If I manage to have you see it the same way at the end of the seminar, then it's going to be the way we see it. But so far, it's the way I see it. So for me, data excellence is achieving something that's a bit more than just I've done a dashboard, I launched an algorithm. No, it's more something that's deeply rooted now in the DNA of the company, so much so that people are talking about it in the same way. People are doing things in the same way, so methodologically, and people can define the value of what they do in a sustainable way. You know what sustainable means? I can do it today, I can do it tomorrow, I can do it in a year, and more or less we are actually consistent in what we're doing. The difference with governance is the process. It's one of the things that will implement or help you achieving an excellent status. But governance is really the process. I need data. So there is a process that says, if you want that, you can find it here. And I have to stress that and here. You can find it here at the level you need it, and I can teach you how to get it in your hands without breaking the company, without putting at risk our reputation, without actually having something that it doesn't deliver to your value. That's governance, data governance. Is it clear as a bit of a distinction between the two? Again, If you don't know what to do, nod. But do you have questions so far? Can you tell me if there's questions on the line?
Right, people say that data is a meta structure about that.
You can set up. So Longo is asking if it's right to say the data excellence is, is the data excellence is the meta structure around data governance. That's what you said, right? Yes. Yeah, it's a good way of saying it. If I say meta structure to my business, we don't understand what I mean. So I need to say framework or approach. Okay. So we're going to talk about 3 pillars, and myself and Michele are a bit of a classic extraction, so we like temples. And so the 1 pillar is going to be culture, as we said. We're going to have the change as pillar, and there's a bit of a delay on it. And then we're going to get value. So the structure of these seminars are going to be looking this way. So we have today, we're going to have a few points we're going to go through, and we are basically still in the introduction. And I need to check the time. And then it's going to be pillar 2. We're going to have somewhere, we'll think about March or so. I don't know, we'll talk about, and we're going to go more into an operating model. So how we actually create the practice, an institutionalized way of doing things in a way that you are getting excellence. And the final one will be more around the big one, the juicy one. It's going to be around the value. How do I get the value? And you'll start to see some strange things here, like, I don't know if people are familiar with ESG. You know what ESG means? Anyone wants to tell me? Yes, what ESG? Environment, social, and governance. Perfect. What about CSR? Corporate social responsibility. Very, very important thing these days, if you're a company. In the past, probably, oh, a charity will have a corporate social responsibility. No, no, no. Now your shareholders wants to know what's your ESG commitment, what's your CSR commitment. And I think something more for us to think about, green data. We're going to talk about that. Just a bit of statistics for you. Where do we put our data? Into data centers. Cloud, like cloud, not cloud. Cloud has got something very solid behind, data center, right? So do you know that this year, the forecast is data centers will overtake general aviation in terms of CO2 emission? Did you know that? 22% data centers, 21% general aviation. And data centers are wasting 600 billions of liters of water per year, right? So I think we have a bit of a responsibility as people that want to use data, not to really spin whatever number of terabytes environment we want to have just because it's on the cloud, just because it's cheap. Because we're starting to actually incur in problems. So we're going to talk about that in pillar 3 as well, because that's part of your value, or part of the potential depletion of value. Right. So let's go in the thick of it. When one of us is hired in a company, usually they want something like this. They want the jack of all the trades. They want the Swiss knife. You need to be able to do a bit of everything. You need to know governance. You need to know science. You need to know BI. You need to know data risk management. You need to know data privacy. So we are literally jack of all the trades. And you will see that if you go on LinkedIn, search for a chief data officer or head of data management or any of this job description, you will find that. They are 3 pages long. Nothing to compare to a CFO. The CFO said, come here, do finance. People understand what finance is, right? Instead, come here and do data. Everyone in the office will try to add their own thing. I want him to do a bit of that. I want her to do a bit of that. So what happens is that you have today an existing organization, but people don't know where to put you. People actually don't know what to call you. They're going to call you CDO, CDAIO, CDIIO, and that would be Chief Artificial Intelligence Officer. The best one I heard, which was the one I wanted to be called like that, is actually Data Intelligence Officer. That in Italian spells Dio, right? So a god. You're a god, right? Unfortunately, not there yet. But so there is an issue because the companies are established things. They are sometimes, but most of the time, very difficult to change. And just to have this guy here, you know what the chief information officer is, to be established with the guy that looks after technology, just to have that person over there to be part of the group, to maybe going into the board, has been a 35 years journey. We have a problem on the line because this is actually no, because that's gone.
This is the signal that we have no connection.
Okay, what can I do? Not my fault, isn't it? Hello, we're back.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, we lost it for a second. Okay. So what I was saying is that they're very difficult to change. So then there's going to be one first stress is who do you report to? And that's not an easy thing to fix, because who do you report to sometimes might tell you what the company wants to do about you. So if you end up reporting to a CFO, it means they want you to probably fix first finance and performance in finance. If they ask you to report to the CMO, which is marketing, maybe they want to be more in terms of more, you know, commercially progressive. They want to do more stuff. They want to take the customer journey, improve the customer journey. So there's a lot of nuances to navigate there. And associated to that, what you have, am I lost the click in the end for a second? Yeah. So the other thing is to consider is that companies are actually having shapes, and certain company, I don't know, but if I actually, don't tell me that the mouse is using no, the battery is going. Hang on. Oh no, I found a way. It looks like this way is working. So companies are shapes, and for you to introduce yourself to a company that is multinational, multi-country, multi-product, you need to decide also how to govern things, because most of the groups of data, and again, sorry if I bore you with the organization, but if you don't understand this, it's going to be difficult to follow that. So you have, usually you start you can have more of a centralized approach to things in which you are the boss and you have a group with you that sits in the central headquarters and then tells everyone what to do, right? That's more like a centralized governance. Then you have something a bit more decentralized. You have, but companies are not having really an HQ. Companies are more an aggregation of multiple units that are sitting in different countries, in which case you need to be decentralized. So basically you need to go and talk to each one and convince everyone of what you're doing, and everyone is talking to everyone, and they're trying to change these things together. And finally, you can have something that's a bit more hybrid, in which you have a federated approach, which is usually the one that works better. And when you are still having a group at the center, but the group at the center is doing some specific things that may be writing the policy, describing how you should do certain things, whilst the group, all the business units are going to be the one executing stuff. So in practical terms, if I want to put it more into an AI in terms, you might have someone at the center that is creating all your infrastructure. It says, we're going to do AI this way. This is the place where you do your experimentation. This is the place where you put things live. This is the place where you certify, you register your products. And then if they don't do that, someone else in the units, maybe the people in Italy, in the unit in Italy, they're going to do their own stuff. The people in the unit in Brazil, they're going to do their own stuff. But they're all at least looking and smelling and tasting the same. Different types of approaches for different type of intentions with different type of outcomes. But unfortunately, companies are what they are. So when you're going into one of those in the companies, you need to try to find the tailored bespoke solution for the company. You can't just go in with, this is the standard, this is the way you should do it. Doesn't work. And last but not least, there is a process framework problem. Data, as we said, exists kind of for everyone, but there is not a data process. So one of the other things we're trying to understand here is, where do I put the processes for data? Everything is existing, and data is crossing all of them. So processes, by definition, are usually digital process. Taking data, doing something with that, giving to someone else that will do something else in another process. But if I want to change the way we look at quality, to change the way we look at metadata, conceptual management of my data, how do I do it? Where do I put it? So I'm throwing at you a lot of questions because I want to try to stimulate a bit of a debate in what's going to be the nuts and bolts of the next pages. Are we doing with time? What time is it? So we start now with, before I go next, any questions so far? Because these are, no questions is a stupid question. Just ask if you feel you want to ask. Yes, sir.
That is also energy.
Yeah.
So a big amount of data requires energy.
Yes.
So we will need more energy.
So the question is, I repeat it for the, so data is energy, and we are getting more and more hungry for data, so we're gonna need more and more energy. So the question is, what do we do? Sustainability. So we need to be better at sustainability, but there's another thing we can do, which is gonna be part of the pillar two. We can talk about productization of data in a way that you reuse data. So because if I imagine that I wanna do a dashboard or an analysis of the orders of the company. Right? Companies will have customers will place an order will bring you revenue, right? So the three things I've said, customer, order, revenue. These are things that shouldn't be changing, or you shouldn't create any time you want to do a analysis on revenue or on profitability. So there should be no point, oh, that's Silvio, thank you. There should be no point at which, if you are in Sweden and you want to do a profitability analysis, you will need to take into a system all the orders from Sweden, then do an analysis on that, then cross them with the customer master, then understand what's the pricing, and then calculate the profitability. In theory, I should have somewhere in one place in the company the orders of the company with the profitability, and whoever wants to access it should access it, and people should say, oh yeah, that's exactly what I need, or people should say, that's almost what I need, can we change it a little bit? So the essence of reusability is creating assets or products better than assets, because data doesn't behave as an asset, for people to reuse. Maybe they want to paint it in blue, the dashboard. Maybe they want to add a drop down as something else, but the essence of what you use for data analysis shouldn't change. That's usability, and that's how you reduce the amount of data you put into a data center. Make sense to you? Have I answered the question? Any other question? While I drink a bit of water. The meantime, you were shy as an audience, and a bit shy. No. Okay. Yes, sir. Yes. So the question is a bit more, he said, I'm talking about data governance, and part of data governance should also include the standard for consuming data. That's what you're saying? No, more about the regulation for doing that. Okay, so yeah, so part you missed in the I did that on purpose. So in the statement I was making about data governance, there are two key critical words. And now let me go 1 second on that. This is much better. So the two critical words there are with securely and authorized. So if you are you familiar with all the GDPR? Is anyone familiar with GDPR? That's want to get familiar with that. As the global data privacy regulation for the European Union, there are a lot of these new regulations are coming in, a lot. Why? Because data is wealth. Data is critical to human being rights. So governments are saying, you're not going to be able to do whatever you want with it anymore. You're never going to be able to take the data you want out of my country and put everything into a Google Cloud just in US. So there are regulations that are getting more and more protectionists. And so part of those regulations will impact your governance. So governance will need to be really cognizant of that. And you need to have a good control mechanism. So I know that, what's your name, sorry? Nikhil. I know that if Nikhil is sitting in Naples and wants to access, I'll give you a true example, data in China that will potentially show him the power plant or panel, or sorry, the panel of a nuclear plant in the diagram, the blueprint of a nuclear plant in China, Nikhil cannot access the data. China will say, you can't do that because that puts at risk my security. And that has to be built in your governance. Now, as you're probably smiling, I'm smiling because I say, flipping heck, so this is complex. Yes. No, I'm telling you, because big corporations are having a headache. Because imagine a company is present in 100 countries, they're subjected to possibly more than 100 regulations. How do you know you're in compliance? Because there are regulations saying you can't touch the customer data, you can't move the customer data there, you can't move that IP data here. My security of if you're working with let's say a military department of my country, you can't talk to anyone. So imagine how many constraints you're having. So your governance process, still a process, has to be good and has to be continuously reviewed. And you need to work with people in legal, people in compliance, people in IT, people in data, because nobody has got the one answer that you need. Is answering what's saying? So once governance roles were boring. When I joined Schneider, I said, I don't want to be called data governance because it sounds like the kind of role you enter a room and you start to see red dots darting on your chest because people want really out of the room, right? Now, governance is essential. So if you don't have a proper process, you're not going to survive. You want to stretch a bit? If you want to stand up and jump, that's why I'm not sitting, guys. I'm happy for you to stand up and do something because I want your, I don't need your body, steady. I need your brain steady on this. Okay, so we are here. More question? Thank you. Two questions. Thank you. Regulations are creating a problem to council. Data governance is the solution. Regulations, yeah. Yeah, you talk to different regulators and you see. Sorry. The data governance is, Nikhil was saying, so regulations are creating a problem for there are so many. Yes, there is a lot of regulation. There's many companies. How do you avoid that? There is gray areas between what you can't. So the only thing you can do is use the word that people don't like, which is lobby, because lobby is not a bad word. Lobby is actually telling the regulator, hey, it seems like you want to do a bit of prosperity in this country, but do you realize if you issue that law, you're gonna kill us? So the lobbying has to say, hey, like we're doing now with the European Union. The European Union is coming out with 5 massive pieces of regulations in data. They are doing the Data Act, they are doing the Data Governance Act, they are doing the AI Act, the Digital Service Act, there's another one I don't remember. But it's massive. Each one of these pieces of regulations are like 100 pages. Very transformational, very advanced, very progressive. But we're starting to tell them, if you're starting to treat AI as a product, you can't put in the regulation of AI the product safety regulation. There's already existing in the product safety regulation. So that's the type of lobby you need to do. Yes.
Can I ask you a question about the fact that Europe source? The fact that Europe is getting so strict in this kind of regulation does not affect the economy because basically we are in a globalized world.
Excellent question, Professor. Yeah. But we should do a seminar on regulation. But anyway, I'll cut it short and say the view of the European community is that they are trying to foster better competition within Europe. So the idea is that there are today, the players that are having all the data are not sitting in Europe. The players, right, number one. Number two, small and medium enterprises in Europe are not having the same amount of capability, access to data, money to do what the big companies are doing with data. So that's what the regulators literally want to regulate. They want to level the market and want to say, we should create data altruism. They come up with this, data altruism. This exists, this is data socialism, this is data altruism. Data altruism in which you are trying to create an ecosystem in which altruism doesn't mean I give you a present and I don't get any return, right? Actually, in their view, altruism is that I put at the center some data that can be useful for multiple people. And because data is not an asset that is depleted when if you and me are using the data doesn't lose value. Actually, data increases value. That's always said, that's not an asset, right? And people saying data is an asset is not really true. So the idea is that if I create this ecosystem where people can access things, can innovate better, faster, the prosperity of my area, the area I regulate, increases. And they're expecting to see other regulators that are going to come to the table and do the same thing, like has happened with GDPR. Because they were the first one in GDPR, like everyone now is doing privacy and protection, more or less in the same way. So the intention is good. The practice has to be looked very, very carefully because it's a balanced regime. Okay, let's go to what's happening next year. So here, I'm talking about the scaffolding, because that's the first thing you want to do when you get to the company. When you build something, you want to put scaffolding. Because you want to prop up people and being able to do what they're supposed to do. So if we look at our tempo we want to create. So the essential pillar, we're going to go into all the different details of that. But we are literally scaffolding around the first one, which is culture. And culture has got a few components that are, again, maybe a bit boring, data chart, discipline, but fundamental. Why? Because what is actually making culture? Anyone wants to say? What is making culture? What's culture? Any idea?
It's 2,000 years.
Apart from how long it takes. So, any idea? Culture, what is it? Sharing of? Sharing. So what do you share? You share certain things, right? And you're probably simplifying your sharing if someone is putting them in writing. Because one thing you have oral culture, then oral culture at that point comes written culture. Written culture becomes, previously we were agreeing that killing is not the right thing. Now we have a law that says that. And it's something that you can sustainably, you see, I'm using the same word, sustainably maintain, because when you have a law and there is an enforcement. So what you're trying to do is to come up with simple ideas that people can latch on in what you need to do with culture. And that's the simple idea that I put in place. The simple idea, you go into companies, sometimes you find 25 pages policy that says, this is the way we do data. This is the way we manage things. I said, we worked 2 months. I was having in my head a clear understanding of what I had to do. 2 months to create 1.5 page. 1.5 page, it was saying 5 simple things. You want to be good at data? You want to be excellent at data? There are 5 things you need to do. First, you need to govern it. And this is not, my friend Nikhil, data governance. This is the governance of a journey. You expect there is someone there that says, this is something we want to do. Your CEO, your CFO, and whoever. And we want to persist in this. There's going to be people looking into this. There are going to be people overseeing this. There are going to be people forcing this. That's the governance. So governance, because it's a journey that you want to funnel into a certain direction. Then the second thing that kills data is when we tribes are describing 2 things in the same thing with 2 different words. So standardization is key. If we don't call this a cup, and I'm not using this by chance, because in Italian, probably you would call still this a glass. Yeah, make no difference between plastic and glass. In English, this is a cup, which is different from a glass. So if I tell you, count how many glasses are on this table, you might come up with 2 different answers. And that's killing data, killing everything we do, killing all your algorithm, killing every measure you want to do of performance. So standardization is key. We need to find the people that standardize things. Second, and it's going more into the second pillar, but we tell you now, resilience. Resilience of data means, you remember the famous project is forgetting about data? Remember that? So resilience is rich. If someone is doing something that basically going, sweeping out, making a lot of disorder in all the order I've done. Yesterday, I was having a fantastic table that was explaining everything about everything in my customer. Tomorrow, because someone has created a new product and they didn't tell me, my customer table is worthless. Because I have 20 billion of reconciled cells, I don't know what to do with it. So that's resilience. How do you make sure that people, when changing things, there is resilience there? And then we get to the critical points. Compliance. You need to be compliant. Why? Because if you're not compliant, someone will go to jail. Because if you're not compliant, your reputation is destroyed. And guess what happens in the digital world? Without a reputation, you haven't got a product. Because if I'm selling you an app that is giving you an insight, and you don't believe that that app is giving you the right insight, your product is worthless. So I trust you. Why all these companies are giving trust, and the trust pilots, the trusted trader in the UK, you have of course the what's the big one for oh my god, I'm missing the one that you go for when you want to know if an hotel is good or not. Which one is that? TripAdvisor. So why is that important, and what is making that important? Because I make a choice believing what I'm seeing there. I trust the data and saying that, by the way, most of that is unstructured because it comes from people that are telling me things. So I comply with the regulation, I comply with it, I bring trust, and I have a product. And the last one is the even trickier one we're going to talk about at the third pillar, which is ethics. Ethics is a world on itself in data. If you've been asleep in the last 7 years, probably you missed Cambridge Analytica and all of that. But if you went asleep, you know that ethical is out there, where people are now, if you say someone, oh, I'm building an algorithm, they will look at you like, okay, you're a bit of a witchcraft happening. What you're trying to do, you're trying to stick it to the little people, trying to swindle them out of the money. That's what they think when you say building. Why? Because ethically, people have not behaved properly in the past. So the picture of big corporation playing with data is a scary one. How many of you will trust big corporation to decide about something incredibly important for you? Can you raise your hand using AI? Can you say, how many of you will trust a company that can tell you, oh yeah, this is the best medicine you should take, it's based on my AI? How many of you will give that company their complete access to medical records to develop medicine with AI? Can you raise your hand? You see, and yet you want to do data. So this is important. Do we agree? I'm looking at Nikhil as Nicholas. Questions on the charter? Emotion on the charters? Okay. Yes, sir. So you're asking if this is the culture?
Social filter for public sector and private sector, decision making.
Well, you say if culture is important for private sector and or public sector to achieve good decision making.
Yeah.
I don't think it changes wherever you are. If you're talking about social sector, public sector, charities, wherever you are, the people that need to agree on something, and they need to achieve a decision. You need commonality in culture, in beliefs, in jargon, in customs, and all of that. You do. Yes, sir, Professor.
I ask a clarification because
Please, clarification question.
How to concepts does this
Aha.
use of the data?
It looks like we've been preparing this between Yes, the question is not all, no, the question and the challenge is not all concepts. No, we can't agree 100% of the time. Can I say that? Yeah. Or we can't standardize 100% of the time. That's what you're asking. True. But we need to agree to disagree. For me, standardization is also valid when you say, when you are in China, you call it this way. And when you are in Brazil, you call it this way. At least I can see that and I can take measures. So I'm not saying you should say everything is blue or everything is green, but if we have shades, we need to agree on the shades. You shouldn't have someone that wake up in the morning and say, I want to, I know the customers in Schneider having 13 classifications, but because I know my customer best, I want to use 15. That's wrong. What you should do is you go to people, and we're going to discuss about these people in a second, that will decide whether what you're trying to do is something we want to standardize across the company, or what you're trying to do is heresy. And by the way, heresy sometimes is the root of innovation. So you shouldn't kill the heretic. You should listen a little bit, right? So let's go to the next one. And it's exactly opening up to what I was saying. I want to tell you a story. And that's a story that happens all the time in companies, and we create the multiverse companies. So there is a guy that's called data provider, and it's a guy in a story made of two people. The people that are wanting data, let me see if I click bit by bit. The people are wanting data to make use of data, and the people are having data, right? So there are two different types of people. And the story goes like that. The user says, I need this. Have you got it? Provider says, I have something a little bit like that, but not exactly what you want. Okay. Then the consumer says, can you make it exactly the way I want? And the provider says, no, I don't have time, I don't have budget. How about I give you what I have and you do whatever you want to do with that? And then the consumer says, okay, give it to me, and then I use Excel to make it better. So what's wrong in this story? The problem in this story is that there are, in a normal company, there are many of this relationship. So each one of the consumers potentially will come up with a different view of the world. And that's carcinogenic in a company. Why? I'm not using this by chance. Because they're going to create the little bubble of Excel, and we lost one thing. They're going to create the little bubble of Excel in which they will need to account and compensate for every single change that happens in the company. And they need to do it locally. So this Excel is exactly behaving like a little carcinogenic cell that is going to grow until it kills you. And that's also the reason why in many companies you sit in a board meeting and say, Nikhil, how much you're growing? 3%. Giuseppe, how much you're growing? 3%. Michele, how much you're growing? 3%. And then the CEO say, okay, so how come the company is going down 5%? The issue is that three of them are completely right in their own idea, in their own concept of what they're measuring. But again, because they are victim of the multiverse, because Giuseppe, Nikhil, and Michele have asked to their people to go and find me the data and then make it better. So they make it better the way they want to make it better. So nobody's actually right. Everyone is right, but nobody's right, really. Complete sophism. That's what happens in the multiverse. So what you need in a company, you need to introduce more people and a new role that I was babysitting in General Electric. I've been really stressed by it in Lloyd's banking group, and I've been actually really stressed by in Schneider as well. That name is data domain owners. And these are the people that are the owner of the meanings. These are the gurus of what is what. These are the people that have the rights, not the duty, the rights to say to the company, these are the customer classification that we're going to use. This is the list of products we're going to sell. This is the list of providers we want to really deal with. So they are owning data, but not owning in a very possessive way, but in an intellectual way. And that's scary because most of people are not ready to see themselves as experts that are good enough to tell the CEO of the company, this is it. Culturally, again, this is a cultural problem. People are not going to be ready to say, I know what is this, because they are fearful that their boss will say, what the heck you're talking about? But their boss is sitting here. They're not seeing exactly what should happen from a customer point of view. So you need them. And the idea is that in our story, now you're having a requirement of data there that is standardized by the domain owner there. It goes back to the provider and is then becoming consumption. This is a cycle that you go over and over again. And so you're doing right, your data gets better and better and better. Or at least you know how bad it is because you have a standard that people say, okay, you're asking me this classification, I haven't got to the system yet. It's going to be there in 6 months. Right, so what you do, you tell the consumer, I'm going to give you something that is not perfect, but I'm telling you how not perfect it is according to the standards of the company. And at the center of this, you need a group of people that are going to help all of that. That's us, that's the data team, that's what we do. That we are trying to make this wheel working better and better. And if the people that are doing data science around you are saying this really doesn't apply to me, think about more, these are the data scientists, these are the people where data is, and the person up there doesn't change because you cannot provide someone something that they don't understand in terms of the meanings of the company. You cannot create an algorithm that is spitting out data that doesn't sit in the standard of the company, otherwise people will reject it. Stay with me? You time check, please. If you raise your voice. Now, I need to save half an hour for the exercise. Have you sent already the file? I'll give you the clue, the cue to send the file. So you're in your laptops with you, right? Yeah, so you're mobile. Or mobile. Well, it doesn't need a lot of that. It's an Excel you need to open, you need to do something with it, probably divided in 3 or 4 groups, and we'll find out. And what we do, I'll go another 10, 15 minutes and we stop for that. We have 5 minutes just for arranging the groups. Then you work on that 20 minutes and you give me the answer in 10 minutes. That's the plan. So there are bodies out there. I'm not going to go through this, but what you have is who are the new people? What are their responsibilities? So again, this is scaffolding. You need to start to call people with the certain names. And you will not believe how bad it for someone is hired in a company to do a data scientist officer work or a data quality work or a data leader work. They come into the company tells you, oh, my HR unfortunately hasn't got the names for the data team yet. So you're going to be a database administrator. That's the best thing you can do. Would you actually stand, would not be a bit shocked? I'm not a database administrator. And yet that's part of the scaffolding. You need to attract talent. You need to have people that are coming in and want to work with you, and you need to call them with their name. And then you have all the governance bit on this side, which probably we spend more time later on, but probably not today. Now, the other thing is that I was mentioning in relationship to the data domain owner is that you need to have a data domain model. And what is it? Imagine that all the data in your company are all the words of a dictionary. So what you want is basically start to group things in a meaningful way, in a logical way. This is called also logical domain model, in which you say all the words that start with an A are staying in this chapter, and I'm giving to, what's the name? What's the name? What's the name? Angelo. I give it to Angelo to own that. So Angelo decides what's in that, what's not that. In each one of those words, Angelo will provide us the definition, or someone will give the definition to Angelo, and Angelo will approve it. So you do for A, for B, for C, for D. Here in the data model, in basically you have all the words are related to customer, all the words are related to sales, all the words are related to services, all the words are related to factories, and so on. You create the groups. So people are not going to discuss whether it's better to prioritize the quality of the surname of the customer or the name of the customer. But people will say, customer is important. Customer is this domain. The domain is with Angelo. Angelo, we go to Angelo every time we need to ask something. And Angelo is the law maker, I'm the enforcer. I'm using the domain models for stipulate what's the relationship. Basically, you have all of that. Understand how the domain will increase in its quality. We make data better and better. We create a place in which people are going and look for the data and have a definition of what data is. And then over time, finally, we create a common culture of data, common language of data. Everyone is sharing, everyone is agreeing with it, or everyone is agreed to disagree with. That's a data domain model. Do not underestimate how important this is. Do not underestimate how this is tricky to implement. I'm on my 4th year and I'm still not at the end of this in Schneider. But what you want in the end, if you want to, if you want to, again, the final scaffolding looks like this. This is an example of an operating model. An operating model is a model that tells you all the things you should be doing, which data you need for doing them, which technology you need for doing them, which skills you need to do them. So imagine it's like a 3-dimensional thing that if you want to do video training and demos for data, so you have someone that is assigned to that, that is a communication expert, that has got the process to understand which one of the subjects we should have a training for, and it's got a place, like a casting thing or a YouTube where all of those are organized. I pick one, you can pick all of the others. So once you have this, which is complex, but that's what you want to aim for if you want to be proficient at doing what you're doing, maintaining sustainably your performances. Scary? No. Associated with that, and that's the last part of the scaffolding, is really, you need to have in the company some enterprise activity. Data is not alone. Data, we said that at the beginning, data is a team that works with other teams. So you need to start to work with other pieces of the organization because you want to be sure that all of those pieces are helping you to influence the company. So a demand management means, and the exercise is gonna be on this, so pay attention. So demand management is the process by which I know what the company wants to do and I make sure they're doing it in the right way. So if the demand management is not conscientiously taking also data things, for example, you do a business requirement, you want to do a data requirement. If you want to do that, which data you need? If you want to do that, how good is to be your data? If you want to do that, where is your data? So that's all something that has to be embedded in these processes. So again, culturally, you create more of a viral effect in which everyone is doing the same thing at the same time. And talking about viral effect, the other bit of scaffolding when I have in place is good communication engagement. When I started in data, I went to one of these advisory company and they put me in front of one of their long-term advisors and asked him, what should I do? He said, Roberto, get yourself a good communication expert. And he said, communication expert is not the one that does nice PowerPoints, but it's someone that can really make data going viral. Someone that is actually taking for truth this is a Swiss philosopher and says pure truth cannot be assimilated by the crowd. It must be communicated by contagion. The way I simplify this for you is that if Roberto is here and he's telling these things today, yeah, maybe interesting, maybe not interesting. But if Angelo's friend is sitting there, he said, hey, I heard this thing about data domain model, maybe you should have a look. Angelo is much more likely to believe that than take it from me. So contagion means you need to be, the contagion has to happen, and probably is an unfortunate way of describing this after 3 years of COVID, but you know the power of, imagine a COVID as an idea, and imagine that this idea about data is getting the same R number than COVID. Then it will take 10 minutes to convince the company I'm doing the right thing. So you need to really work on using more and more emotional intelligence inside the company, because emotional intelligence is the one you try to use to create an engagement. Have you heard about EQ? You know what EQ is? Anyone? EQ? One. Yes. So is because IQ is more like a rational thing. EQ is more the empathic part of this. Can you say that? Yeah. Yeah. So, and how you do that? If I'm telling your story, you're more likely to believe the story if I'm sending an email, this is it. If I'm having you sitting using a computer, that every time you have a problem, there is a chatbot to say, hey, you should have done that. Or every time you have a need, you have a button that says, look at this 2 minutes video and you will understand it. Then probably you're much better to learn than if I put you in a classroom for 3 hours. Oops, that's what we're doing today. So if I put you in a classroom for 3 hours to learn, because believe me, you know, the statistics of this type of thing is actually you retain 2% of what I said today. So please retain this. That's almost roughly 2% of the pages. And lastly, gamification is an incredible, powerful thing. The shot of endorphin that makes you feel that you're winning is way better than a policy enforcement, which is don't do that otherwise. So if I tell you, oh, myself and Michele, he's the CEO of Italy, I'm the CEO of France. And I put on a piece of paper, Italy compliance with data 75%, France compliance with data 40%, I will actually not stop. I will go back to my team and say, until you don't, I'm not better than Italy, you're gonna be in trouble. That's gamification. That's exploiting the endorphin, exploiting the emotion. What's that?
Trying to do exactly this way, the way that we approach our teaching activities is just to.
So you see, you are exploiting.
No, we are trying to explore this direction.
Good.
It's important.
But why are you doing that? Because this is again is important. Remember what you said about ethical thing? There's a lot of anxiety today because everyone in the office space, office environment, when they talk about what we do. They are fearful that we're gonna actually make them redundant. There is a fear of their jobs, day in, day out. So and a fear because they don't know that what we're getting to is a much more harmonized human and machine environment. That the way I call it is the digital neo-humanism, which really we need to work with people to get the best out of data. So you need to move that anxiety with this to curiosity. This you move to, maybe there's something I can learn. And if you have curiosity, get engagement. And once you have engagement, you can do whatever you want. Because within the limit of the law. And because that's, you have the backing of your people, which is even more important than the backing of your management. So quickly through communication. So the essence of communication is knowing your audience, plan your message in terms of content, channel, cadence, tone, measure what you've done, and then, of course, blab about your successes. This is the propaganda effect. This is the weapon that all of us are using more and more, trying to make sure that people understand when we do something good for the company, we want to talk about it. We want to talk about in every single wavelength. And I don't know about you, but I'm very good at pictures. I'm not very good at names. So for me, metaphors are a nice big picture that creates a mental frame of what I'm trying to say. This I've been using all along. So you go from, I was in G, I was explaining the data supply chain, like the food supply chain, and you have the DOP and DOC. That's the kind. So as a consumer of data, you want to see the DOP or the DOC, so to be sure that it's been built correctly. Or I was likening the journey on data excellence to the marathon that Schneider is actually sponsoring. This is in Schneider in France. So you create a mental image for people and it works better. It anchored to the name of the people, the thing we're trying to do. So metaphors are incredibly important. So the last stretch is talk about marathon. Data is a marathon, not a sprint. When you start to do this type of thing culturally, so long as culture takes thousands of years. Yeah, we don't have thousands of years in companies, but it's not something that you can start today. It's not a diet. Data is not the thing. I want to be good at this. I go on a crash diet. 6 months, I lost 20 kilos. No, it doesn't work that way. It's a process of permanent augmentation. You keep on getting better. You need to use stamina. And what you want to do is to use the concept of maturity. Why maturity? Because these things we do are not binary. You can't ask a person But you can't say the thing incredibly important is in compliance. When your top management says, are you compliant? The worst answer you can give them is a yes or a no. The first thing you say, it depends. Number one. Number two, you start to educate them on something that is gradual, it's a maturity. So today I'm doing this thing a bit better than yesterday. Tomorrow I will be doing this thing a bit better than today. And we establish maturity steps. You look back and you see how much road you've taken. You were a maturity 1 year, you're actually crawling. Now we're actually walking. Tomorrow we're gonna run. But what you need to do, and because in this initial stages, you're bad at quantifying things because you don't know, things are too complex. You can't say, oh, I'm 2.11 from the perfection in the privacy, or I'm actually almost 20,000 times out of a 50,000, I can do good data management. No, you can't say that. You need to say, I'm having a process that is managing data. I'm having an organization looking after the data. The organization is almost ready. So it's 3 or 4, you establish a value. And finally, you use that as gamification, because whenever you start to then create a bit of a number of a journey, saying you're maturity 3, is maturity 2 is worse than you, so it's going to be wanting to be better than you. And there are models for that. This is what we use. I've been using now 3 times. There is a not-for-profit organization that has come up with this maturity model. You use the maturity model, you're assessing yourself, where you are. It's like going through a fitness kind of assessment. Oh, do you have which muscle you got? You want to run a marathon? Never. So, or you want to run 100 meters less than 9 seconds? Okay, let's see how much you're doing today. 15 seconds. I think you need to shave a bit off your time. Why don't you do this exercise? And if you do that, you start to create a nice combination between what your business wants to do in terms of priority, because your business has an intention. Your business is the one that wants to run the marathon. So it's going to have an objective, and the objective is going to have been basically made of things we want to do in our BUs, projects we want to launch, things we have in the backlog, or things we should have done and we didn't do it. And what to do, you're trying to have a prioritized agenda, and listen carefully because it's now the exercise I'm going to get into. And the CDO asks data leaders, I try to translate those priorities in proper maturity targets. And so this is the typical thing you see in maturity. This is where I am. Today I'm current, this is the line I am. And based on, sorry, what's the question? Yeah, the expectation is where you should do, or what it should be. But it's an expectation not based on in a vacuum. An expectation is translating, oh, you want to go and work in Afghanistan, you want to go and launch a new